Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of This Week in Irish History. I'm Dan Murphy. Joining me is our senior editor Lou Samoji here at Blue and Gold Illustrated. And as we do every week, we're going to take you back in time at an important moment in Notre Dame football. And this week, first weekend of November coming up here, which is the 100th anniversary of maybe one of the first seminal moments of Notre Dame football, and one of the most important ones in college football overall, Lou.
November 1, 1913, and Notre Dame 35, Army 13. Like you said, one of the epic moments, watershed moments really in Notre Dame history. Then Gus Dorais to Knute Rockne passing combination. Now, contrary to popular belief, Notre Dame didn't invent the forward pass. That was actually legalized in 1906, and some schools used it effectively. But in that game, it kind of perfected it. And, you know, Notre Dame had to play Army that year because nobody else was playing them. The Big Ten had pretty much blackballed Notre Dame after they had beaten Michigan in 1909, which was their first great upset win. And they had a horrible schedule, so Jess Harper was brought in 1913 as the head coach and athletic director to try to beef up the schedule. And he was fortunate to be able to get Army because Yale canceled its series with Army, and then he got Texas and Penn State and traveled to St. Louis. They made all those travels in 1 month there. But the one at Army on November 1st was the one that opened the eyes of everyone to Notre Dame.
Right, and of course Gus Dorais and Knute Rockne spent the summer at Cedar Rapids in Ohio perfecting that pass on the beach, and they brought it out and kind of shocked Army. They ended up winning that game 35-13. Where does that rank among sort of moments in college football history, and how much of a turning point was that?
You know, it's when ESPN in 2000 was doing its countdown of so many different things that happened in the 20th century, they had a category called Greatest Coaching Decisions of the 20th Century. And number 6 on that list was Jess Harper, the head coach, with the passing attack at Army, and that was ranked number 1 in all of college football there. So, you know, Gus Dorais' official stats were something like 14 of 17, 243 yards, or actually unofficial, something along that, which in those days was unreal. But the other factor was the pass patterns were kind of robotic, just basic button hook. Go out, turn around, and catch it by your chest and everything. And there, it was taught by Harper to catch with your hands, to run, catching the ball while in stride and everything. It was the first real sophisticated arsenal that was really used, and it was really the original spread offense because Notre Dame didn't blow them right out of the water in that game. It was 13-7 Army, in fact, and scored a late touchdown with the pass to make it 14-13 at halftime. And then in the second half, you know, Notre Dame only threw 1 pass in the third quarter, but Army was so wary of the pass that suddenly they began to run well, and then when they were running well, then they threw them over their head, and that was the original balanced offense, the original spread. They outscored them in the fourth quarter, 21-0, and the New York Times wrote that was the greatest display of football they had ever seen out in the East.
I think we so often think of Knute Rockne as the father and the founder of Notre Dame football. Does Jesse Harper kind of get lost in the shuffle there a little bit?
Jesse Harper was the John the Baptist of Notre Dame football. He made straight the path for Knute Rockne. I mean, he created all the things, the national scheduling, the philosophy, and everything else that 5 years later, you know, when Rockne was his assistant, he was able to take over. But he's probably the most underrated figure in Notre Dame football history, and if there was somebody who also deserved a statue out there around the stadium, it's Jess Harper, because there's just so many things born from his impact.
Well, 100 years later now, Notre Dame is stuck between 2 military academies, Air Force and Navy, not Army this year, but they'll be back on the schedule eventually. That's going to do it for us for this week's This Week in Irish History. Thanks for always joining us with Lou Samoji. I'm Dan Murphy, and we'll see you next week.